Welcome to Carol's Kitchen. I am Carol Montgomery with the Gibsonburg branch of the Burchard Public Library. Tonight, we are going to talk about how to make a soft snickerdoodle cookie that is not flat. And an alternative to that, if you are trying to watch your carbs and your sugars, as one of my daughters is, I have another variation of the recipe. They are a little bit flatter, but they taste really good. And the best part yet is we're going to spice up our snickerdoodles by adding some apple topping. And if you like, you can also drizzle a little bit of caramel sauce on top. And to make it even better, you can add ice cream, and you've got yourself a gourmet dessert that's super simple. So let's get started. Our first step is going to be to start with the sugar. So I'm going to start with the regular recipe first. This is actually a recipe from an Amish cookbook I had, but I've modified it some. So I'm going to add 1/2 cup of regular sugar, and then 1 cup of brown sugar. I'll show you my lovely containers here. We drink a lot of coffee, as you might tell from the coffee machine behind me here. But we're going to go 1 cup of brown sugar with our 1/2 cup of white sugar. And if you are one that's watching your carbs, you can do a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar alternatives. And the latest we've been using in our house is monk fruit sweetener. And it's actually even sweeter than regular sugar, but you don't feel so bad after having it. But your next step is going to be to add 1 cup of butter. I get the unsalted butter, and I've softened that in the microwave about 30 seconds for both sticks. And then we're just going to mix that up. And I have heard that a lot of you have already made a snickerdoodle cookie recipe in the past. A lot of times, if you don't use the secret ingredient I'll have in my recipe tonight, they do end up rather flat. But I will say that I've tested this recipe many times. I've taken it to potlucks back before COVID when that was a thing. And hopefully we'll get back to potlucks someday. But this recipe is one that I've taken to potlucks and people have asked for. So I've shared it with them, and now I'm sharing it with you. And I will say that a friend at the library did suggest that I add apples to the snickerdoodle recipe to spice it up. So I am thanking her now for doing that, because I did taste one, and yes, just one, because it was a last minute addition, but it is amazing. So stay tuned, because we'll get there on how to make that happen. So once you've got your sugar and your butter all creamed up nice together, you're going to add 2 eggs. Now if you're choosing to go low carb, low sugar with the eggs, you're going to want to add 1.5 egg whites to that. I actually used almond flour when I did the alternative. It's also a 1-to-1 ratio, but with almond flour you do need a binder, or they don't stick together as well. So then we're going to mix up our eggs, and again, that's just 2 eggs with your sugar. And just so you know, if you are going low carb, MyFitnessPal shows that almond flour has half the carbs as regular flour. However, it does have more calories and more fat. But if you are cutting out your carbs, you probably want those, so you're not hungry as often. Alrighty, once you've got your eggs and your sugar and your butter all mixed together, we're going to start adding the dry ingredients. Next one is flour. So I already have my flour dumped here because I buy those really big bags from Costco. But when you're doing your flour addition, you're going to want to do 2 3/4 cups of flour. And if you were doing the almond flour, it's just a 1-to-1 ratio. So we'll dump that in there. Next, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. After that is your secret ingredient. Those of you who have made these before know that cream of tartar is the secret to a soft cookie. And for that, you'll need 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. And 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're just going to mix those all up together and try not to make a mess. Another secret with these soft Snickerdoodle cookies is that you want to refrigerate the dough overnight for your best cookie. Well, so much for the not making a mess part. In order to save time, I have made this recipe up and gotten the dough ready and then rolled up the Snickerdoodle dough into balls ahead of time and then put them in the freezer. And then you can de-thaw them in the refrigerator overnight when you're ready to use them the next day. I've actually found that to be an ideal way to do it because then the butter seems like it's extra solid right before you put it in the oven. The butter really flattens the cookies out if they're not cold like that. Cookies overall are a great dessert just to do ahead of time, especially this time of year as it seems like there's always something to, I guess, maybe not so much this year. With COVID, there are fewer events. But I can tell you my sister-in-law just had an event this weekend. Sent out a text to bring things, and having Snickerdoodles in the freezer ready to go is a good option to just grab and take. All right, so our butter and our dry ingredients, the sugar is starting to look more like a dough now. If you can see that at home. Needs a little more mixing. Now you could freeze the dough by itself, just in a big clump. If you do that, I would put it in a Ziploc bag, just to make it more airtight. Don't want your dough to absorb all those smells in the refrigerator. But once you get it to a consistency where it's pretty solid, you can start making your balls. All right. But while we're doing that, I'm also going to make up my topping and roll them in the topping before I put them in a bag as if I were putting them in the refrigerator. Now my microwave is above my stove, and in order to not hurt it, I have to turn the fan on. And so I'm just showing you step by step without actually putting them in the oven, so I don't have to have that sound in the background. But for our topping, we're going to go 1/2 cup of brown sugar. And 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And I found I could get these huge containers at Gordon Foods. Before COVID happened, that was something I felt important to stock up on. And we go through a lot of cinnamon in this house. So we need 1 teaspoon of that for our topping. And just mix it together. Brings back memories of making cinnamon rolls. It smells so good. Okay, and then I'm going to roll the dough together into a ball. And I've aimed to make these about golf ball size. In doing that, I get about 2 dozen cookies out of this recipe. That might be a little bit big. Okay, so then we're just going to roll it in the topping. And there you have your unrefrigerated Snickerdoodle cookie. Now I have some balls that have been in the freezer and then in the refrigerator to de-thaw overnight. So I'll kind of show you the consistency between them. I'll do a squish test. So I'm trying to press on these about the same. You can see how quickly that one's squishing. Just imagine that in the oven with our little squish test, that when they bake, they are going to flatten a whole lot more if you skip that step. So if you want a soft cookie that's thicker, you're going to want to keep that step and put them in the refrigerator overnight. Okay, so now for the fun part. You bake your cookies, you take them out of the refrigerator, they're de-thawed, they're ready to go in the oven. After your oven has preheated to 375 degrees, you put your cookies in. They cook between 10 and 12 minutes. You're going to take them out, and they're not going to be fully cooked in the middle because we're going to let them sit on that cookie sheet for 5 to 10 minutes before we take them off. But that's when you're going to make your indentation and keep them on the cookie tray for another 5-10 minutes after. So you're going to let them sit when they come out of the oven. But first, you're going to use your tablespoon to make an indentation into that cookie right when it comes out of the oven, and then let it sit for that 5 to 10 minutes before you transfer it to a plate. Now, if you're going to eat these right away and serve them warm, now is the time to get out the apple pie filling. Now, this I just got at Walmart. It's Baked Good brand, no sugar added. It's still incredibly sweet, and I would recommend that because these Snickerdoodles are so sweet and delicious on their own. When you add the topping, if you really want to sweeten it up, you can go with the regular sugar kind, but then you're just going to add that topping to the middle, and as I showed you in the beginning, and drizzle your caramel sauce on top. And you can enjoy that with ice cream or just simply by itself. I would not recommend squishing down that tablespoon to make a cookie cup for the sugar-free or the low-carb alternatives. They are going to need to just sit right as they are. For that version, I would just put the apple pie filling right on top and drizzle the caramel sauce if you'd like. All right, so that's the end of our Carol's Kitchen for tonight with your sweet Snickerdoodles with an apple pie twist. I look forward to seeing you if you are wanting to join me next month. We'll be making a pot pie recipe that my family has already approved. It's a healthier version of it, but it's also super hearty. Second Mondays at 7. Thanks so much.